What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 30 Minutes of Hell. I am your host, Brandon Baker, joined as always by Joey Jackson and Matt Jackson, and we've got some exciting Arkansas basketball to talk about.
Ooh, Pig
Hey,
Suey!
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 That's the most excited you'll ever hear us. But my
It was a
goodness.
huge week for the Hogs. Hogs got two, not just wins, but two major wins over teams that don't like each other. Um, Beat Kentucky earlier in the week. Huge win, maybe one of the most satisfying wins of Calipari's career. We'll get more into that here in a minute. And then recently beat Texas, both games on the road. And it's always a little bit of a rivalry when Arkansas plays Texas, especially in Matt's household as he's married to a Texas fan. But we don't hold that
Boo.
against him too hard.
I do.
Boo. I think we all do.
Quick reminder before we get into things, we are brought to you by the Field of 68 Podcast Network. You can find us on Twitter, on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your stuff. Be sure to like, subscribe, share the pod. We really appreciate it. But let's get into it. Arkansas, like I said, two big wins, a lot of exciting things going on this week. First and foremost, I feel like we have to start here. Nellie Davis has arrived finally. Um, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people, and I'll get into this more here in a minute as well, but I've seen a lot of people talking about the absence of Boogie Fland maybe affecting Nelly and some of the other guys on the team. Um, I don't think that it was so much addition by subtraction losing Boogie, but Nelly now has his role. There is no question about what Nelly needs to be doing on the court. He has plays run for him. He has the ball in his hands. He's had a chance to build confidence, to find a rhythm, and I mean we've seen it. He's now hitting shots. He's not second guessing everything that he does on the court, on either end of the court. Still occasionally makes the bad play here and there, but shooting a much higher percentage, getting to his spots, getting a lot of steals. He's been a menace in the passing lanes lately, but just doing everything very well over the last three games, really, but definitely over the last two in the two wins for Arkansas.
Yeah, and something that we talked about last pod is we didn't want to see him jack up 10, 11, 12 threes a game. We wanted to see him, catch the ball in rhythm, take a couple dribble pull-ups, and that's exactly what we've seen these past three games that you said he's averaging like 20 points a game. So happy to see that he's getting into a rhythm and really taking advantage of that.
Yeah, and I think we also talked a little earlier in the season when we were wondering what was going on, like with his struggles and everything. It was like he was playing not to make a mistake. And like you said, he's just much more comfortable now. He's playing like he knows how to play basketball. So I'm just super pumped to see him succeed. I should say a formal apology to Nelly Davis just for the sake of he has come back and is playing like a stud because I didn't think he was. I really didn't. I thought it was just so happened to be a bust. But he's killing
I
it.
think everyone
And
did.
yeah, I mean, it was hard to defend him after a certain point. Started out like, oh, he was injured, he'll get his groove, and then it was like, all right, come on, let's get going. And
Mm-hmm.
finally he's in it. And I mean, thank you for being a hog.
Yeah, it's been huge. And just to go along with that, I mentioned it a little bit, but I wanted to articulate a little bit of my thoughts about the whole Boogie Flan thing. I made a big post about it and everything, but kind of what I said a second ago. I don't think that Boogie was so much of a negative on the court that the team is just now better without him. I think that things were going like it was weird how much we relied on him from the start, not just as a true freshman, but also just kind of as an inefficient scorer as it is. It felt like most of the time, most of our possessions ended with Boogie running a pick and roll late in the shot clock, and it just led to inefficient looks a lot. But not only that, it didn't allow other players to have the ball in their hands much. And like I mentioned earlier, I feel like there were question marks about what guys were supposed to be doing. I feel like nobody really had a defined idea of their role, and now they do, right? DJ Wagner has stepped up beautifully in that point guard role. He's been aggressive and attacking, and he's averaging a really good assist to turnover ratio right now over the last few games. Nelly is stepped up as the scoring option. There's only like 7 guys that play like big minutes now in this rotation, and so there's no question marks about what they're supposed to be doing. And I think that has led to the increase in confidence and the increase in rhythm that we have seen more than just the thought that Boogie was just bad, right? Because he's not bad. I think in a different, more contained role, I think he still makes his team better if he were to come back, which I don't think is out of the question, especially if they're going to start playing like this. You might see Boogie in late February try to make a return before the tournament, but we'll see how his injury goes. That's not a news update, just a possibility. Um,
And I think if Boogie does come back, I think the team is, as a whole, is more defined now that he does make us just that much better. Because I feel like Cal has figured out a formula, as in running specific plays for specific players and getting them their points and getting them going. And it's working so well. I mean, credit to Cal for coaching his butt off and finding the way to make it work. But he does that, and then you add in the versatility that Boogie offers. I mean, I think we're just going to be that much better if he does come back. And I'd be fine with him coming back and picking up a role.
Yeah, I may be the one on the opposite end of this. I would love to see him back. I'm not saying that I think he's a bad player. I think he's an incredible player. But the way that this team has come together and the way that they're playing right now, like they're playing off of each other. It's not a one man show. It's not like one guy is taking over. The ball is moving fluidly throughout the offense. I just I wouldn't want to see someone of his caliber coming back, you know, right before the tournament starts. And I mean, with a guy like that, you have to rewrite your offense like that. That's like, that's like LeBron not playing with the Lakers for a full season, them, building. Obviously, college sports is a little different than NBA, but it's so difficult whenever you see a team catch a rhythm and then their best player is out for months and then comes back right at the time where, okay, we have to be running on all cylinders right now. Again, not to say that I think Boogie's not a great addition to the team. I just don't know if the team that we've built since he's left is a fit for the type of game that he was playing before the injury.
Yeah.
It would have to be the right role. Like it has
Yeah.
to be like even before the season, I think we discussed a little bit about how he might benefit from being that 6 man, like that spark plug type scorer. I think in a role like that where you're playing 25 or less minutes a game, 20 minutes a game to where you're more contained in, and there are plenty of possessions where he just kind of has a green light to go score, but you're not taking over the game and 75% of our possessions in the pick and roll action, right? Like if he comes back, two things I think it hinges on. Number one, exactly what I just said. It has to be in the right capacity and the right role for himself, but it also um, the offense has to continue as it is currently, even if Boogie is injected back in. You bring up a good point. Can he fit into what the offense is doing? Maybe I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe he's much more of a ball dominant guard. But the way that Cal has been running sets, and you see guys running off of screens and motion more often, I think if he can fit into a motion offense like we are running, his scoring ability can improve things. But I mean, you're right. We don't know how that fits. Maybe if there was a reason we weren't doing that much before when he was a major part of the rotation.
Yeah, and I would assume he would be on a minutes restriction anyway. So him coming off the bench it would be the most likely option for him anyway. And I think that would fit, like you guys were saying, pretty well coming off the bench instead of injected right back into the starting lineup or something.
Yeah. All right. Well, enough about Boogie, guy that's not playing right now. It's a big topic of discussion I see a lot of, but Hogs won 2 big games this week, right?
Yep.
Um, Going back to the Kentucky game, it was like there's been so much butting heads on social media, so many experts talking about if Calipari can still do it, if he can go to Arkansas and recreate any kind of success. Um, Early in the season, there's a lot of talk about how it's not looking that great, especially in the beginning of SEC play. I mean, I know Cal has a championship at Kentucky, but that had to be one of the most satisfying wins for him personally, probably in his whole career. And he won't say that outright, right? Like he won't come out and just be like, I just wanted to beat them so bad. But I mean, you could see it. Like he looks so excited during that game, but even into like the next game, I feel like he's so excited to be coaching this team right now. And I think Thero is the one that said it in the post game about how Cal has kind of had their back all season, and they knew they just had to have his back in that Kentucky game and go get that win for him. And that was so much fun to watch, obviously from a fan perspective, but to go into Rupp Arena and win big. Like it wasn't just a squeak by win. Like I think the broadcast said it was the biggest road SEC win we've had since like 2007, like
Mhm.
18 years. That's huge. And obviously from a basketball standpoint, build some confidence. Exactly what we've been talking about. Guys saw the ball go through the net. They feel what it feels like to be back in the win column and everything. But just a huge monster performance, great win. All three Kentucky transfers played incredible in that game. They combined for 52 points, a really good percentage from the field, just stuffed the box score all around. But those three were like the catalyst in that game, and that made it even that much sweeter. It was so much fun to watch.
And it was really the first time that we've seen this team play a full 40 minutes. Like they dominated through and through the entire game. You could tell from the jump they wanted that game. So one of the things that I think we talked about last game was you can see something different in Cal. Like it's like his passion has been reignited after that Kentucky win. You can tell he's always been the type of coach, like you hear it from all of his players. We heard it, before the season started. He's one of those guys that genuinely cares about his players. He loves what he does, and you can see every ounce of that. And that's something that I love a lot about him. You didn't get that vibe with Musselman. You got that he was passionate about basketball. You got that he loved what he did, but Calipari loves his guys. He will go to war for his guys, and I just think he's finally having fun doing what he loves again, and it's being reflected in the way that the team's playing right now.
Yeah, he just looked rejuvenated after that win. I mean, he really did. Like Brandon said, it carried on into the next game. It was just you could see that the love of the game, it's like it just came back. And I don't know if that I'm sure that Kentucky game was hanging over his head all season long, even well before the season started. And getting it out of the way, it was like just a burden lifted off his shoulders. And even for the former Kentucky players, I feel it was a burden lifted off their shoulders. They're
Oh yeah.
just playing out of their minds right now, and I love it. I mean, the chemistry is there. It seems like everybody's talking on defense, everybody's moving well on offense. Everything just looked better
Mhm.
during and after that game. And honestly, not trying, I'm going to knock on wood right now. It's the perfect time to get going, in my
Mhm.
opinion.
Getting hot at the
So
right time,
yeah,
100%.
so let's keep it going. I mean, big game coming up, but they're
Yeah,
looking good right now.
And
yeah, and
going
that's one
back,
of the. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, going back to how strongly the Kentucky guys have been playing, Wagner has been night and day. We've talked earlier in the season about how he just kind of disappears. These past three halves that he's played have been incredible. Like he's just taken a huge step forward. And to your point, Matt, I think a lot of that had to do with coming out against his former team and just that second half on, he's taken over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just to your point exactly. The one of the most fun parts about what's happening right now is that it's not like one guy is doing it. Or like there was a stretch last season in Musselman's last year where Caleb Battle caught fire and scored like 110 points in 3 games or whatever that was. And it's just not like that this year. Like there were
Mhm.
5 guys that scored digits against Kentucky. including 21 from Thero. And then I think it was three guys scored double digits against Texas, led by a season high 24 points from Nelly Davis. But it's Wagner, it's Davis, it's Thero, it's Big Z knocking down three still, it's Carter Knox stepping into his role. I mean, it's all eight guys. Um, Jonas Adu has been kind of like, I don't know what exactly is going on with him. If Big Z is just playing so well that it's hard to get Adu on the court, if he's still having issues with his foot, I don't know exactly what the deal is. He's not been like great all season, but I thought that he was fine kind of right before SEC play started and in some of those games, but he's only playing like 6, 7 minutes a night. But the other seven guys, like they're figuring it out
Yeah,
together.
I was gonna say that's the most surprising part about this. This entire season has been a total roller coaster. But the most surprising thing is that Adu has not been playing. Like honestly, like we're talking an all SEC defender last year who is right sitting on the bench because our team as a whole is playing so strongly together. So it's just it's weird to see, a guy that honestly we feared last year on Tennessee come to Arkansas and be a guy that, like you said, Brandon, plays 6, 7 minutes a game.
And I think you have to credit Big Z on just playing so well. I think we knew going in, like, this guy can shoot. He's an offensive threat, but he always just was a step slow on defense. And he still has his lapses, but they're a lot fewer now. And he makes
Mhm.
up for it just with his length of getting a good time block, you know, and getting a rebound so they're not killing us on offensive rebounds. I mean, he's just doing everything right now.
And
And
he's
Yeah,
playing a lot. Go ahead, Brandon.
career high 12 rebounds in his last game against Texas, talking
yeah,
about keeping them off the boards. Yeah.
He's just playing a lot tougher than what he was at the beginning of the season. Like he's bodying people up, like he's grabbing tough boards, like you said, Matt. He's playing a lot bigger than what he
yeah.
used to.
And another thing I noticed, especially in the Texas game, is him and Wagner I feel like, are taking on the leadership role, like the on court leader role, more than anybody else I've seen. They're very talkative. Like whenever I think it was actually Big Z who got a foul, and Wagner was like getting on his butt saying, "Why are you fouling? Like, don't jump, don't do this." Because there was only a minute left in the game, and it was getting close in that Texas game towards the end,
Yeah.
and they were actively talking to each other, and I love that because Big Z was doing it with Knox, Wagner was doing it with Big Z, Big Z was doing it with Wagner, and it was just really good to see leaders. And it doesn't seem like it's just one, but they're all being vocal. They're all playing well together, talking to each other, admitting mistakes, pointing out mistakes, and fixing them. And that's what is making us so good right now, in my
And
opinion.
it's funny you say Big Z and Wagner are the leaders because I feel like I've seen Nelly doing a similar thing. Like
Yeah.
if he sees, honestly, the younger guys. So like I've seen it multiple times with like Knox. Knox will kind of get hot headed or he'll start playing fast. Same thing with Billy Richmond. Nelly will like pull him to the side and be like, "Hey, like it's cool. Like we're fine." Like he's not as like loudly vocal about it, but I feel like I am always seeing him grab the guys like in a moment of like tenseness or something and being like, hey, like let's keep a level head. And that's exactly what you're saying, Matt. There's not a singular leader. Like I think we've got 2, 3, 4 guys that are really stepping up into just leading the team all around. Like we don't have just one guy who's being that vocal coach.
I think Z too has kind of become like a different type of leader too in terms of like the emotional leader, like in big plays and stuff like that. Like our bench gets hype and stuff, but I mean Z's funny to watch whenever he starts celebrating after things, but he gets them going, right? Like that's kind of how you roll on things. You got to get your emotions high and start feeling yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so 100% having that like team leader whenever things are going wrong or something's happening to hold each other accountable is very important, but also having that guy that keeps your team rolling and helps you get on those runs because he's a spark plug in himself, but helping that emotional high I think is just as important. Because I mean that's one thing we talked about several games ago is that we had moments where someone would make a big play, but it didn't really amount to anything or like lead to a run because there was no leader on the court, no way of keeping it rolling. But I think Z getting more minutes and getting more comfortable, I think he's kind of taken on that role of keeping the guys hot and keeping them rolling. But it's been fun to watch all around for everybody or for all the guys playing. Um, Big one. We haven't really talked much about the specifics of the Texas win. Incredible first half. Hogs led by 23 at one point. Weird foul calls down the stretch. They were getting in their own way. They were like diving at balls and fouling on rebound attempts and stuff. Some very questionable calls to go along with it, but it was just like the momentum had just entirely shifted at that point in the game. But all that being said, incredible like mental fortitude to come through that and not fully give up the lead in that moment. Because when your lead goes from 23 down to 6 with like 4 minutes left, I mean, that on the road in front of a crowd that's getting back into the game, I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. And the guys, like the older guys, Nelly hit a big three. Thero had a dunk or two that were big in the final moments. You're making a bunch of free throws. Thero is really the only guy that had free throw troubles in the game. I mean, it says a lot to find a way to win a game like that when things you started losing your grip on it. I think that's a mark of a team that can be very good when you start figuring out how to win um, like weird situational games like that, messy games.
And some teams don't get that before March. So the fact that we're, seeing that early and we're already, kind of to your point about mental fortitude, like we're playing well in those situations. That's a very positive thing to look for if we do string together a few wins and make it to the tournament.
Yeah, and I love that we have two of those guys right now that are going in and making crowd silencing plays like Thero's dunks. Oh my gosh. That one in particular that I'm thinking of was just
Yeah.
shocking. I didn't know how he stayed in the air that long. But then Nelly going down and hitting a three from way back. And you're like, hey
Get a few
man,
of them.
Confidence.
yeah, you're like, hey man, I didn't expect you to hit that. Like I didn't necessarily want you shooting it. It gave me flashbacks to Devo, you know. It's just like whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh, good shot. You know, but he was playing much, much better. But I mean, having those guys that when the crowd's getting into it and then they go and do that, if I was in that crowd, I would shut up. You know, it's good to have
Yeah.
that silencing ability, and props to them for doing it because that was huge.
Yeah. It is. It is huge. And like you said earlier, they're getting hot at the right time. I mean, we're on the well within the final third of the season now. A lot of winnable games left on the schedule, but just a ton of like quadrant one games left, a ton of opportunities still left. Um, Up next, one of their toughest games remaining, one of their toughest games on the schedule, like for the whole season, a road game at Alabama. And we're going to get into a little bit of a preview of that game and then talk a little bit about the rest of the schedule and what Arkansas needs to do to finish out and give themselves a shot at the tournament. But first, we are going to take a quick break and we will be right back.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 as we all get ready for the best month of the year, March Madness. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use the bonus code FIELD150 and you will get $150 in free bets on your first wager with BetMGM, regardless of whether or not you win that first bet. Here's the best part. All you need to do is deposit and bet $5 of your hard-earned money. This is how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD150. That's FIELD150. Deposit at least $5 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $150 in bonus bets regardless of the outcome of your bet. Just make sure you use that bonus code FIELD150 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available in one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient when I have to go cover games in Philly or New York, which happens quite a bit. When you cross state borders, you just log into your existing account and fire away. You don't have to create a new account in each state. It's easy, it's simple, and it's clean. And most importantly, we have some fun stuff coming up for the conference tournaments and for the NCAA tournament. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boost, and my personal favorite, a nice little parlay boost here and there. So download the BetMGM app and sign up today. Big news, guys. I am thrilled to announce that we have partnered with Autograph, a company founded by the GOAT himself, Tom Brady. The Autograph fandom app gives you access to the best college hoops content, fan contests, and exclusive rewards like discounted tickets, all for doing the things that diehard fans like you already do, following your favorite team in the news and listening to podcasts just like this one. When Tom, and yes, I am calling him Tom, we're on a first name basis these days, co-founded Autograph, he had one mission in mind: change the fan experience for the better. It works like this: you get all of your college hoops content you want in one place. You get articles from your favorite writers, pods from your favorite hosts, contests from your favorite creators, all on the feeds and the sites that you already enjoy. But instead of having to go to all these different places, it all comes to you in one spot, the Autograph fandom app. But here's the best part: the more content that you consume, the higher you rank in the app. As you consider to level up in status on the app, you can unlock unique rewards curated exclusively for you. So download the free Autograph app in the App Store and use the referral code F68, that's F68, or tap in at the link in the description below or in the podcast app of your choosing to start earning points for doing something as normal as listening to this very podcast.
All right, so up next, Arkansas is back at home for a game against Alabama after back-to-back road wins. Strangely enough, I was just looking earlier. I think Arkansas is actually shooting like notably worse at home than they are on the road. And I think that might be skewed a little bit by the last two games, just because we've really found our rhythm the last two games. So maybe not something to read a whole lot into, but maybe to pay attention to as we hit a couple of home games in a row now. But Alabama leads the nation in points per game. Very fast-paced team. They've got some experienced players. One of the most experienced, one of the best point guards in the country, and Mark Sears averages over 18 points a game for the Tide. That's over 20% of their team points come from Mark Sears. And it's way easier said than done, but I mean, you cut off the head of that snake, I feel like you give yourselves a good chance if you can really limit Mark Sears. And Arkansas has been playing really good defense lately. I talked about it a lot right before the Texas game, that Texas was not doing very good this season against teams that ranked highly defensively, and it showed. I mean, Arkansas just stifled them the entire game pretty much. It wasn't until they started getting a crazy amount of free throw attempts that they really started creeping back into the game. So Arkansas's defense, I think, going to be put to a big test in this one. Have to keep making shots. Obviously, none of it matters if you're not hitting shots, but defending Mark Sears, I think, is, I mean, primary key number one for giving yourselves a shot in this game. But aside from Sears, you've got Grant Nelson, who is a big name 2 summers ago, potentially to join the Hogs whenever Musselman was putting together his last team. Ended up going to Alabama. He's averaging 13 points a game, leading the team in rebounds right now, 8.4 per game. Then you've got a couple of younger guards, Aiden Holloway and Phylon are both averaging double digits. But the big man in the middle, Clifford Amorie, I think that 6'11", he's almost 250 pounds, that big frame, big rebounding type body. I think what we were just talking about with Big Z earlier, I'm curious to see how he is able to handle this matchup in particular. Uh, Cliff is not like a super skilled offensive center, but he's just huge. Like, he's big. He leads the team in offensive rebounds. I don't think Texas had very good big men. They weren't super strong, and one of them got hurt halfway through the game. So it was like the perfect game for Big Z to thrive in. But he's been playing really well lately beyond Texas as well. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But I feel like this is the kind of game the is the reason that you brought in someone like Jonas Adu. And I really think that Arkansas is going to need Adu at some point down the stretch here. I don't think you can just have Big Z and Brazil running the center position all the time. Um, so I really hope to see a little more of Adu moving forward and not like forcing him into the rotation. Like I want to see him playing better and just moving a little better, defending well. But I think this could be a matchup where you see more of him because I don't know. Z has been more physical, more aggressive. He's rebounding pretty well, but he's still not quite strong enough to deal with some of the guys like Cliff from Alabama. Maybe we'll see. Maybe he proves me wrong. Maybe his rebounding, his ability to stretch the floor, maybe it's too much for Alabama's big men to deal with. But I'm very intrigued by that matchup. And then the last guy I want to bring up was Chris Youngblood. He missed a lot of time at the beginning of the season, didn't start playing until around Christmas time. But then in his last 3 games, he has been inserted into the starting lineup, and he's actually averaging like, let me see if I just had it pulled up. He's averaging like 15 points per game over his last 3 games, despite like his season average only being like 9 points per game. So since he's been a starter, he's really kind of turned it on, shooting over 50% from three. Definitely someone that Arkansas is going to have to keep an eye on. It feels like the type of player that can really go on like one of those 8-0, 9-0 runs by themselves and just really like change the momentum of a game. So definitely a name to remember and keep an eye on there. But Alabama on the season is they only have one loss in conference play. They're 8-1 in SEC play, 19-3 on the season. Their only loss in conference play was at home to Ole Miss in a game where they shot only 25% from three. I don't know, like I said a minute ago, it's easier said than done to limit a team, especially with someone as good as Mark Sears. But that's a big key right there is being able to limit their 3-point attempts the way that we did with Kentucky and the way that we did with Texas. If you can keep Alabama from scoring that much from three, again, you give yourselves a pretty good shot at home because they're such a high scoring team. They get to the free throw line a ton. They're top 5 in the country in free throw attempts per game. So defending the 3-point line while also trying hard not to foul too much. That's going to be interesting to watch, especially with Arkansas's shallow rotation. I worry a little bit about foul trouble in this game if Alabama does get to the free throw line a lot. Hopefully, being at home maybe helps out the whistle a little bit in our favor. I think that we get a fewer fouls called against us at home than on the road this season, as is the case with most teams usually. But those are the big keys that I'm kind of watching for this game specifically. Defending the three, don't foul too much. Can you stop Mark Sears? That's kind of my big 3 keys to this game.
I mean, keeping a team from shooting well in Bud Walton is like a high level math equation at this point. I mean, everybody shoots good in Bud Walton. So figuring out how to fix that, you got half the problem there. But yeah, Dia, I mean, do what you've been doing. There's nothing more I can say to do other than play like you've been playing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what comes out of Adu for this game. Like you said, Brandon, he's kind of the guy who we would like to see against those bigger centers. And also interested to see how Big Z holds up if he, rides his hot streak, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. One thing that I wanted to touch on in the last segment, but I feel like I try to do it every pod because I feel like he doesn't get the flowers he deserves. Trevin Brazil is playing incredible this season. I feel like we don't talk about him very often because he just does the little things right. Like he's not putting up, 10, 12 points a game. He's not grabbing a ton of rebounds. He's not getting a ton of assists, but he is such a strong, consistent guy on this squad. Like I feel like every game I'm like, oh wow, that was a really good play by Brazil. Like he's passing the ball well. He's playing tough. Like he's not forcing anything. He's making open threes. Like he's just I want to give a shout out to Brazil, and I want to see how he stacks up, how he lines up in this equation against Alabama, because I think he could really be kind of one of our X factors in every game of the season. Just because when you have that guy who consistently does things right, which is crazy to even say because we were saying the exact opposite last year about Brazil. But when you've got this guy who's just doing these little things right, whenever he misses a step or does has a turnover or something, it's like the end of the world. So it's like we're not seeing these really good small things that he's doing. But if he stays consistent, I'm really excited with how he fits into this, like everything else that's happening throughout the season.
That's a good call out too for this game specifically because Grant Nelson does start alongside bigger bodies. Like Nelson never really plays the center for Alabama, and he is 6'10". Like he's kind of a similar archetype to Brazil. And I think Thero is more than capable of defending that, but I feel like you could see a lot of Brazil in this matchup as well, just trying to match up length for length. So that's a good call out. All right, so moving beyond Alabama, hopefully Hogs can ride their hot streak and pull off another win here. This is going to be a tough game even at home. But Arkansas now has 9 games left on the season, and they've set themselves up really nicely over the last 2 games to really make a push for the NCAA tournament. And just kind of quickly wanted to talk about what exactly that looks like in terms of like what they need to do to get into the tournament. They're only games left that could really hurt them by losing would be at home against LSU and then on the road against South Carolina. The other 7 games are all against such good teams or their away games that losing them doesn't really kill your resume as far as like tournament metrics. That being said, they still have to win, I think, at least 4 of the next 9 games to put themselves like firmly on the bubble. And if you do that, you've got several quad one wins, no major losses. Like you're going to have one of the best bubble resumes. But to really solidify it, I think they need to go 5-4 over this last stretch of games, and I think that puts them in the tournament pretty squarely. And currently, just looking at Ken Palm, one of my favorite metric sites to use, he's got every game listed out and the prediction, the percent chance of each game. He currently has Arkansas winning 4 of their next 9 games, beating LSU, beating Texas again, beating South Carolina, and beating Mississippi State to finish at 7-11 in conference play, 18-13 overall. And like I said, I think that does enough for your resume. That gives you a very strong bubble resume. But you've also got this home game against Alabama. You've got a home game against Missouri where Ken Palm gives you a 47% chance to win, and an away game against Vanderbilt where Ken Palm is saying you have a 43% chance to win. Obviously, this isn't make or break these percentages, but all of those games I feel like are winnable. I think they can definitely get to 5 more wins over their next 9 games and get up to 8-10 in conference play. And I think that really solidifies a tournament spot. So for those of you trying to keep track, trying to figure out what the tournament might look like, that's really what you're watching for. You have to get 4 more. I think 5 really solidifies your chance to get in. But they built their resume quite a bit, beating Kentucky and beating Texas. Those are both major wins from a resume perspective as well as a momentum shifting perspective. So,
Let's do it.
all right. Yeah, let's see if they can win a few more. It's going to be a big game. I think Bud Walton's going to be rowdy this weekend. I think
Mhm.
2 wins
We
in a
need
row
that.
coming back home.
Yep.
I think it's going to be rowdy. It better be. If you're listening to this, you better be there if you can.
Yeah.
So I hope it's rowdy. All right, that's all we have for you guys today. As always, appreciate you tuning in to talk some Razorback hoops. We are brought to you by the Field of 68 Podcast Network. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your stuff. Please comment, like, share the podcast, subscribe, whatever it is you do on those sites. We greatly appreciate it. I've been your host, Brandon Baker, joined by Joey Jackson and Matt Jackson. And as always, Woo Pig.